The following program is a Town of Colony television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, but I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
Top of the day, I'm Joe Doolittle.
And I'm Kate Detting.
And this is Story by Story.
Celebrating the human story.
We're going to spend an hour talking about stories and storytelling and how words influence our life, how stories build our memories, and how we can kind of make ourselves part of a greater community by sharing our stories. Wouldn't you think that's what we're going to do?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Good idea.
Yeah. I wish I'd written it down so I'd remember it, but that's okay.
Well, this is being taped.
Good. Yeah, Thank you so much, and thanks for joining us. We've got some wonderful guests, and we've got a great theme for today. So we're really pleased to be here to bring that all to you. But I always ask Kate, what's the most interesting thing she's been doing, because she's a very interesting storyteller.
I knew you were going to ask, and I'm all set. I was at the Women's Club of Albany with Nancy Marie Payne to help celebrate International Women's Day. And we told stories of women from around the world, women who have made a difference. And I ended with my story of Fatima Knight, a 23-year-old Muslim theology student who in 2015 responded when black African-American churches were burned down after the massacre at the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. She created this fundraiser saying all houses of worship are sacred. These must be rebuilt and you can help. So this is a Muslim theology student and Christian churches. She raised $100,000 in a month. And the Women's Club of Albany raises money to help women. And so I was able to say, and then she also said, I started this fundraiser to give hope in a time of fear and to stand up for those who have suffered injustice. And those words really resonate with me and touch my heart. And so this story means a lot to me, and I'm never quite sure, when I say Muslim, how people might be reacting. I got a wonderful response, and absolutely. I was 40, mostly women. I felt I was surrounded by kindred spirits. It was just a wonderful, wonderful afternoon there.
So you told a story about a great-hearted woman, young woman. And in addition to the story, you've got the memory of the experience of sharing that story, don't you?
Yes.
And it stays with you, doesn't it?
Oh yes. That it's I get this warm glow when I think of how people were nodding and smiling, and then I could see they were really touched as I was.
And so when I went kind of through the opening about building and sharing a memory, you may have just heard those as words. The reality is that every time we meet each other, we often share a story that makes those kinds of connections. And one of the great things about storytelling is that there is a little bit of organization and discipline to storytelling that aids that process. But inherently, we are all storytellers. And that is what it's at the basis of really is building community. So we'd like to talk a little bit about method as well as what we like to talk about in the experience of storytelling. But that was a wonderful program you must have done. I wish I'd been there, but of course it was at the Center for Women, so I probably would have been thrown out.
No, there were several men in the audience.
Oh, good. I like a little diversity, right?
Right.
I had a neat time.
Yes.
I go to the First Reformed Church down in the Stockade, and it's an old historical church that goes back to 1680. And in February, the first week in February, we've had disaster happen. The church has been burned 4 times first by some Indians and some French in what we call the massacre. And we've just done a big renovation and are celebrating the completion of that with a great common room where we will tell stories. And I got to run a brief history of the church using slides and some of my favorite stories. And we parsed it out to 2 other people and kind of passed it back and forth. And sometimes history can be dry, but in that moment, everything clicked. And it was just a great memory for the group, as well as for the 3 of us who did the program.
I bet you talked about people, and I think with history, if you talk about the people, then it's very relatable. If you're spouting the facts and the dates, it's like,
Yep.
I don't know, I can't relate to it. But if you say, this happened to this person, you go, oh, I know somebody that happened to, or it happened to me.
Yeah. And the theme with this congregation has been actually resurrection. I suppose that's meant as the Christian issue, but also just like in the Phoenix issue, because over the 340 almost years of the church, the congregation has had to reinvent and rebuild itself. And that's the message that kind of resonates with the present day. And as a theme, it resonates in a lot of stories and lives. So that was fun to pull together. That was really good.
Excellent.
We've got probably one of the best stories about storytelling in the Capital Region with us today, don't you think?
Yes, once again, we'll be talking about Children at the Well, youth storytellers for peace and understanding.
And we can either talk about it or we can have our guests talk about it, and it's probably if they build the memory on their own. But Marty Gillard's with us, and Danielle Collins is with us, and you are both the coaches for this season of Children at the Well. And Children at the Well is a part of something called the Interfaith Story Circle of the Capital District, which we're all members of, and kind of it's an affiliate of our regular story circle. I won't call you guys the irregular story circle, but
No,
that's
you
probably
have
going
that.
too far.
Yeah,
Okay. But we're really glad you're here, and we would love to hear what's going on in this season with the program, and we'd love to just sketch a little background on the program, and then we can do everything else you want to do.
Sure. I'd be happy to just start and say that our work started with that large interfaith adult storytelling group over 25 years ago. And finally, we've got a nonprofit that's called With Our Voice. So anybody who wanted to find out more about us, go to withourvoice.org. And this year particularly, we're starting again with the children. We did 10 years of children, and we were mostly working in the Albany area. But the Schenectady Clergy Against Hate, very powerful group, writing letters to the editor to sort of keep the idea that diversity is important and we're connected around the issue of faith. They are supporting us by helping us find the new students that we're starting with. So it's a year full of brand new students, sometimes very nervous, sometimes very show-offy, and we're just having such a good time. And I am so happy that Danielle Collin is my coach. We've been having a good time together. Do you want to say a few things about what you like about it?
Yeah, I first came to Children at the Well a few years ago as a guest, and I shared some of my work with the kids that were in the program at the time, and I got asked to come back and be a coach, and I was really excited to be part of the program again, and it's a really good group. Like Marnie said, they are a little nervous, but they're working really hard on their stories.
How old are these kids?
Mostly
11 to
about 14.
14. Yeah.
Good.
They're from all different faith communities, and we're actually going to be having a show on April the 7th, and we're going to hold it at the Schenectady JCC on Balltown Road. It'll be a 3 o'clock beginning, and I believe the show is first, the performance of all the kids. We've got 10 kids, and then we have a potluck, vegetarian, so that all of our people can eat all the foods. And so that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be a kind of culmination for this first group, but at the same time, probably over the year, we might be having some of them go out into the community to share stories.
You know, it's I was listening to you. You know, I run a couple of post-service programs at my church, and I've had in the years past. I've had a couple of the kids tell at that, and they still talk about it. So we'll talk about that. And if you have a community gathering in your faith community that you'd like to spice up a bit, I'm sure Marnie or Danielle would be happy to host a couple of kids to provide a program, because it's a high energy group. It's a high energy group, and these young people come from a faith background, but they often come from a little different cultural background.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, how do you recruit kids to the program? How do they find their way to you?
Well, that's what we did this year, was asked this group of clergy people, men and women, from the different faith communities all around Schenectady, find us a kid, find us a couple of kids. And that helped. Early on, way back at the beginning, over 10 years ago, we had a really nice structure for gathering educators from all over the Capital District. And they were the ones that helped us find students, high school teachers, things like that. And we even did some workshops with those teachers. This year, kind of starting up again from scratch, the clergy pretty much were the people that helped us find, announce that this is going to be happening. We meet at the Muslim Association.
ICC,
Islamic
Center of the Capital District, ICCD in Latham.
Yes, that's where we meet on the Sunday afternoon. So they've sent us pretty much the most kids, but we've got Jewish kids and Christian kids.
Oh, great.
I will say that one of the things we're very proud of, that in these last couple of years, and when you were saying you could contact us, the person really to contact is Paula Weiss, who is the editor of this amazing collection of articles, guides to how would you start your own kind of interfaith storytelling group or intercultural storytelling group, and we're promoting it. It's on Amazon. Anybody can purchase it, called Our Stories Connect, creating youth storytelling programs to raise confident, compassionate, and capable leaders. So we're looking for how faith has a lot to do with what's happening in our world, and how do you learn leadership through storytelling.
Yeah. So it's not what people might think of religions around the world 101. You're
not.
You're not exchanging.
We are exchanging stories.
Right.
We're not saying, I believe this, oh, well, I believe this, or this is the way we think. It's not so much that. There are wonderful adult interfaith groups in the Capital District also, where people can do that at an adult level. But we're really about story sharing. I had a wonderful experience this week where a young woman said, oh, look, my Christian story is echoed in this Hasidic Jewish story. It was great. It was great, yeah.
So, Danielle, you are a poet.
Yes.
But a performing poet. I mean, I don't know the right lingo.
I primarily say I am a poet. I believe that all poetry is meant to be heard. So it comes with the performance part, or to be read, or performed if you memorize it that way. And I do other things with poetry. I'm also a visual artist, so sometimes I think about an image and then I write a poem, or the other way around. I'll have a poem and then create the image. So there's different ways to navigate through how you write poetry, how you share poetry out in the world, and just how you bring it alive for people. I think sometimes poetry is one of those things where you've read it in school, and then
what's these are? I think I know the houses.
Yeah, but there's so many different possibilities.
And so, you've taken that background. How have you applied that to Children at the Well?
Well, at the root of the poem is telling the story. And being able to connect with the audience is really being able to tell the story, you know, and having a narrative that someone can see themselves in, or that they can take something out of, like a little piece of it, and say that I know that feeling, or I've seen that before. And it's also about like telling a story that from a voice that might not get heard. And I find that to be really inspiring for me and for the audience.
Danielle runs a poetry
I
swap.
do.
How would you call it? Open mic.
Yep, I run an open mic in Troy. It's called Poetic Vibe at Troy Kitchen, and it happens every Monday.
Every Monday.
Yeah, this April is actually turning 3, so
Wow.
I'm really proud of it. It's been running every Monday, except for holidays, but every Monday since 2016.
Oh, I've run a little open mic on storytelling, and I had poets there. We should try to invite you over, but I'd have to find a different day because I meet on Monday too.
Oh.
And as you were talking, I have several friends who are poets, and I'll connect you because I'll send them over to Troy. They're you know, poets are, at least with me, my poetry comes and goes. There are times when I can write it, and there are times I can't write it. But the idea of placing that little connection in the listener is really the essence of it. Because, and you know, often you never know what it's going to be. You know, people will come back and talk about something that resonated with them that didn't resonate with me.
And sometimes it's something, I hear something that I've never heard before, and I'm going, I have to remember that, and then listen for it, watch for it. Like this morning, the garage door opened, and I heard birds chirping. I'm going, where have they been? Why haven't I heard this? I wonder, I've just been bundled up and just, you know, get in the car, get out. Yeah, listen for the birds. I'm thinking Mary Oliver, there's some poem of hers that something I had never witnessed, but made me want to.
You know, we've been talking about poetry, we've been talking about story. Maybe one of you could kind of provide a little story that we might discuss, that might serve as an example. Do we have anybody who could do that?
I'd be happy to start in on that. It's just a little memory that I've been thinking about a lot, again, now that I'm back working with young people, is I kind of think of it as, how do we get inducted into a faith or into a culture? I grew up in a small town in central New York, Fulton, New York, and I had 2 grandfathers that particularly affected my early way of thinking. Both of my parents were teachers. So my grandfather Gillard, my father's father, every morning he was my babysitter or sort of helper to get me dressed early in the morning. And he would stand me up on the table in the dining room, so he didn't have to bend down and get those activities going. And as I put on my pant legs one at a time and my shirt one at a time, my shirt sleeves, it would go like this. Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here. Ever this day be at my side, to light and guard, to rule and guide. Amen. I was just a little girl, but as I work with young children, I think a lot about how we get inducted into something. And that was both inviting me to faith, but also to my imagination that I had an angel watching over me. My other grandfather, my mother's father, he was a singer, a big Irish-American singer, and you know, if vaudeville were still around, he'd be up on that stage. Indeed, what he did was start a restaurant so he could come out with all his children and sing barbershop harmony to the guests between the courses. And he would stand at the piano every time we had any kind of family gathering. and he'd watch his adult children sing, and he'd watch the young ones say, "Oh, I have a solo," and encourage them. I can see his hand holding up like, "You can hit the high note. Come on, hit it." And also he would say, "Tell the story. Tell the story." Because to him, songs were always about emotion and feeling. And I am so grateful for those two men and many more Irish-American relatives for inducting me into the world of story. But it also was very much about opening my heart and deepening my understanding of my place in the world.
Wow. Thank you, Marnie.
That was just great. And again, the crucible for me was when you were describing your grandparents. You slip right back into two modes. You see yourself in conversation with a grandfather, and then you see yourself as a grandfather in conversation with your grandkids. I was listening.
No, I'm very happy if you were thinking about your grandkids.
But trigger those things, and again, that even in this staged environment, the resonance was there, and I think that's the point.
And there were many, the tell the story was very much what you said earlier about the narrative in the poem, and it's really wonderful what we do. It really is.
And I would have to commend the book as a reference on the method of the fellowship vehicles we've been talking about, and it's a wonderful piece of reference for any person who's doing any kind of group dynamic, group learning kind of thing. And so not only does the program get a little royalty off of that, but it's the traveling with the information and the method that's important, and we would really want you to share that.
Yes. And it's been over 10 years, so some of the earliest kids have graduated from college.
Yes.
And they've been leaders.
Two of them, two high school juniors, are assistant coaches with us. So we really have the foursome, and it's wonderful to have them.
Is that Kalafala's sister? Is she involved?
Kalafala's sister, Kalafala Osman, is the older brother now in law school.
Yeah.
His younger sister was always with us, hanging around at various events and looking to become one of us. And then she's a masterful speaker, Aya Osman. And our other is Varun Mandeka. Thank you.
Mandeka.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Varun. Yes.
Varun and Aya. They're our right-hand gang. Yeah.
Yes. And Varun and Aditya's younger brother, Atharva, have been telling with Story Circle at Proctor's in our wordplay series.
That's right.
That they joined Story Circle of the Capital District, not to be confused with Interfaith Story Circle, and so they volunteered to tell stories at 2 or 3 of our programs. I don't think they're telling at our last program on April 7th, but they've been, and they come up. We have a crowd of 30 people. Well, and they're quite at ease. That it's wonderful to see. And they're not going and they're very poised, eloquent. They're wonderful storytellers.
Varun is a very practiced storyteller, and he's been a wonderful addition to truly showing the kids how a story develops, how he started it, and then he knew he needed more detail, and he'd tell to his family, and he'd tell to friends, and people would help him think about, oh, I really like that, I like that. Can you tell me more about that?
Right.
And he's really doing a nice job with kids.
Yes.
Yeah. As is Aya. She's got a lovely way about her that is so encouraging. So the two of them have been a great help.
Yeah. Well, what is this name of the story? Michael Parent. I took a workshop with him, and he said, anybody can be your story coach if you give them these instructions. Listen carefully, and then at the end, tell me what you want to hear more of and what you want to hear less of. And those are very valuable.
That's right on wisdom, I think. There you go.
I mean, there are many other, but those two will have you progress with the development of your story. And what you said was very similar.
I'm sitting here, and I have, over the years that I've been kind of involved, I haven't been a coach or anything like this, but I've come to know some of these young storytellers. And remarkably, we've stayed in touch. Marnie had me take Kalafala Osman, this tall, talented Sudanese Muslim. I drove him to the Sharing the Fire conference, and it was the ultimate road trip. It was like, here's this young kid just out of college, and here's old Joe. And we had lunch with some college buddies.
Of yours?
Of mine, yeah. And then we went down to New Bedford for some family and stayed overnight. And by the time we we've bonded. And it's just been a wonderful story for me to get to know more of the family and more of the life. And just to have a good conversation every once in a while with Kalafala. And I would never have known a Muslim Sudanese immigrant kid, without this event. So, and he's not a kid anymore, but I mean, So. But
there is a picture of you and him, and when he came up to about here.
Yeah. It was, I remember. Well, that's all. We won't go to those memories, but there's solid stuff. I commend the book to you, and we've more than shown you the example of kind of the strength in fellowship building of story and storytelling.
Right.
And maybe we'll come back and maybe we'll do a little bit of what's going on and let people know where they can hear more stories or get some coaching.
Okay, let me get to my slides. Okay, so these are coming events on April 1st. This is true. This is not a joke. Joe's series is now the first Monday Tales and Stuff in the Stockade, now held at the Moon and River Cafe. Arthur's is undergoing renovations. Arthur's Market. Arthur isn't a person, it's a place. Yes. And 7 to 9 at Moon and River Cafe. Kent Bushman will be speaking on April 1st as the featured teller. But it's an open mic for storytelling, music, and spoken word.
Poets are welcome.
That's good to know.
Okay. And then we've already mentioned on April 7th at 3 o'clock at the Schenectady Jewish Community Center, JCC, on Balltown Road in Niskayuna. The Children at the Well students will be performing, and then it's followed by an optional vegetarian potluck, and all are welcome. But slightly earlier that day, at Proctor's will be the last word plays of our 12th season at Proctor's, where solo performers tell stories celebrating the human spirit. And the topic is shenanigans. And Siri Allison, Claire Beetlestone, myself, Bonnie Mayan, Mary Murphy, Linda McKenney, and Barbara Palumbo will be sharing stories about shenanigans. And I can't remember what I plan to tell, but I'll have to look it up
and
get ready.
Well, you do have a couple weeks, so there you go.
Yes, exactly. Because we're taping in the middle of March, so you can see this in April. Okay, and then we have, yes, the Interfaith Story Circle. Originally a parent of Children at the Well. They have monthly meetings. In April, it will be on Thursday, April 11th, Stories for Women of Faith. The community co-sponsoring this event is the Upper Room Inclusive Catholic Community. And it will be held at the meeting will be held at the New Covenant Presbyterian Church on Western Avenue in Albany. So people are welcome to come and listen, welcome to come and share stories. They're not expecting a polished story. They're expecting people to share parts of their lives. And then on the next week, on April 17th, when it will really be springtime, right?
Right.
Right. At 6:15 at the Washington Avenue branch, formerly known as the main branch of the Albany Public Library, we'll be holding the Story Circle of the Capital District's monthly meeting, which is where storytellers can share works in progress. We ask that you do not have any notes, that you just are telling, and you can get as much or as little feedback as you want. First, and I always boggle at this word, we say nice things. Appreciation. I want to go acclamations, but I'm going, that's not quite right.
Or affirmations.
Affirmations, yes. And then if you want, you can ask, what did you want more of? What did you want less of? Did you have any problems? Whatever you want. And we try just to say, well, I wasn't sure which woman was speaking when the mother and the daughter were we try not to solve the problem, because that's really the teller's decision. And we certainly don't say, well, this is the way you must solve it, because that's not right. I had somebody try to solve it. It was in another group, and it was like they pointed out a problem, and they had the emphasis on the wrong person, and so they gave me a solution if I wanted to feature person A, but it was really person B I wanted to feature, so I just had to redo that whole section because it wasn't clear where my focus was. Anyways, I digress. And then, we have Marnie at the fourth Tuesday of every month, September to June, up at Cafe Lena in Saratoga Springs. They have a storytelling open mic. And again, no reading, no notes, just go up. But this doesn't have to be a polished work because it's an open mic, so it could be a first telling. Marnie will be the featured teller, having 20 to 30 minutes for her, and then everybody else gets up to 10 minutes. So
Marnie's going to stand on the table and get dressed. I'm sorry, couldn't pass that one up.
She might talk about that show,
okay.
but she won't actually do that, right?
The other wonderful thing about Cafe Lena is Cafe Lena, and it has been renovated, so if you haven't been up recently, it's even greater space for performance, and especially for something as intimate as storytelling. So we really do commend that to you.
Yes, it's like the old lady has gotten a really good facelift. That you can't see the scars. It's not too tight. It's just improved sound, improved tables, etc. So the doors open at 6:30, and their menu is available. Their full menu is available. And it's a very modest fee. And then I just wanted to show what our 12th season at Proctor's consisted of. And our last show, as I said, is April 7th. But we had 5 other word plays, and then we had a wonderful celebration in November. And if you can't get to any of these live events, we're always available on demand on your computer. Over 200 stories are available via storycircle@proctors.org, and then click on YouTube. And most of the stories have been gathered in this studio at the Colony Town Library, and we're always very appreciative of the home that they've given us here, and Greg Rusinski's work, very patiently dealing with the storytellers who come in, and including Joe and me.
Kate, if I had one more April thing that's coming to my mind, and I'll give you all the details of it eventually. Not the first Monday, not that April 1st, but the next 4 Mondays.
Okay.
I'm going to be offering a class at a place called the Consultation Center. It's on 40 North Main. I'll give you all the details about it.
And you can see this on the slide.
Yes, on the slide. That will be
that will be birthed between right now and when.
But that is in Albany.
It is in Albany. It is in Albany, and it's a 7 to 9. It's a class, but it's actually a class about looking at our lives as stories, as you were saying, that natural way of thinking about moments in our lives, and it's called How Do We Become a Channel of Peace? There's an old expression, it's from a song or a prayer perhaps, that St. Francis of Assisi years ago, make me a channel of your peace. So we'll be just exploring very naturally, not rehearsed stories, very much like the Interfaith Story Circle does. What are the moments that have taught us a little bit more about how to be a channel of peace? So it's 4 Monday nights in a row. I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but they're the Mondays following April 1st.
15th, 7th, 22nd, and 29th, perhaps.
Yes, they're all April Mondays, and 7 to 9, and it's on 40 North Main.
Is there
is
there a charge?
Yes, there is. It's a class. It's a 4-week class, and altogether it's $50. You can pay the night you start, or you can pay up front. And they do like to have your name up front that you're coming, just for security in the building.
So follow the registration information that you can see on the slide.
That's right.
Okay, and is it cumulative?
Actually, people could come one night and not come the other nights, but they ask you to pay $50. They don't really set it up as a
concentration. Yes.
That's right. That's right. And if you have to miss, you have to miss.
Right, but the group is formed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you come on the first night, you're going to be hooked, and you're going to want to be there the other 3.
Yes.
Oh, you definitely will. I've been doing these kinds of classes for many years, and we might get a small group, but it's a really lovely bonding between people because we get well listened to. It's not conversation, it's storytelling and being truly listened to and appreciated. That's our work.
As opposed to, has she stopped talking yet so I can say what I want?
Or being interrupted. Yes, yes. Conversation, that's the way that goes.
Yeah. So it's wonderful learning to be a champion. And God knows we need more peace.
Little channel of peace. Maybe we could turn back around to the process and to the coaching elements of Children at the Well. And Danielle, we've had your observations, and we'd love to hear more, but I'd like to hear a poem.
Oh, okay. I can share a poem. I'm thinking of a woman I used to see on my way to work years ago. She stands on the corner of Washington and Swan. She looks like she used to sing with jazz musicians. Bessie Smith singing "No One Knows When You're Down and Out." She holds her brow steady, shoulders back like a dancer, dancing in her mind to the songs of struggle and life. She inhales to prep for the question, holds her breath for the answer, exhales to keep from dying because she's met with so much silence. All she hears is her own voice bouncing off the noise that surrounds her, surround sound silencing her. She stands on the corner of Washington and Swan. On the corner right behind the Capitol building, where government don't see her, where vendors sell hot dogs and relish, and the hot sun reminds her what hell is. She's been standing like homelessness never breaks her spirit. Truth is, she's been waiting for change. Not the kind that wrinkles, and not the kind that jingles. Truth is, she's been waiting for change. Wanting to be something, realizing the people who are something aren't sharing the wealth, no knowledge to spare, like these folded bills in their pockets that aren't forgiving or forgiving. She stands on the corner of Washington and Swan where her clock is ticking to the sound of heels clacking the sidewalks, fresh suit tails wagging in the breeze. They wear slacks with sneakers. On their lunch breaks to Dunkin' Donuts for the iced coffees, walk right past her to the vendors to get their french fries and iced teas. Seems like nobody sees what her eyes see. She stands on the corner of Washington and Swan, on the corner where the buses stop, where people carrying bus fare wish they could share what they don't have because they know what lessness is. So close to it, they can taste the gratefulness in them. And she swallows the gratefulness in them that they're not in her shoes. But her melodic voice continues. She's singing the blues. She's singing the blues. She's still singing the blues to the jazz of car horns, jingling keys, the drum of her heartbeat, and one last chord that keeps her unashamed to survive.
Oh, yeah. I was holding my breath.
Whoa. Whoa.
My mouth was a little dry.
You drink. I just, because you transition from your intro into the poem. Mm-hmm. So it was about 2 verses before I realized you were into it. And then were you ever into it? That was just, and of course, I was trying to place Washington and Swan. Mm-hmm. That's right by the Al Smith building, right?
It's well, the Capitol building is there, and across the street is that really large,
the education
state, yeah.
So there she is, right in the center of everything, and people are going right. Mm-hmm. And then that line about she was looking for change, not wrinkled or then jingled, and that was just it just kind of that caught me right there, saying, "Oh my." That was just. I don't want to. I mean, I'm going to be effervescent here, so
I loved the not money, not forgiving, or forgiving.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. That the double meanings that I heard. I think it's Stephen Schwartz who composed the music for Wicked, the music and the words, and he likes to have. I have been changed for good. That has, has 2 meanings. That for now and forever, or with the goodness issue. And so you had several. You had the forgiven, and you had the change. And maybe there was another one, but I went, oh yeah, that's. Poets do that a lot.
We like words.
Yeah,
we like words.
And definitions and meanings.
And then the placement on the page too is a thing that is way cool. But
now, have you published your poetry?
Yes, I have. I published a book called Dreaming in Creole, and it's a collection of poems and some prose and one short story about my Haitian heritage. My family is from Haiti originally. I'm first generation born here, yes. And the book really pays homage to where my family is from.
Wonderful.
And is that available?
It is available.
Where? How?
And we'll get you a slide.
Yes. You can purchase it at the Open Door Bookstore in Schenectady.
Oh, really?
And you can also purchase it at the Market Block bookstore in Troy, and then it's also on Amazon.
Right. And the title again?
Dreaming in Creole. And Creole, the common spelling for Creole is Creole, but I spell it Kreyol. And the reason I spell it that way is because in Haiti, the spelling for Creole is Kreyol. So I spelled it the Creole way so that I could distinguish it. Yeah, just to distinguish it from other Creoles.
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
I was born in Bridgeport and grew up in Fairfield.
Wow! I went to high school in Fairfield.
Wow. I didn't, but I've always wanted to go.
Yeah, I went to Ludlow, but on Umpqua, and I don't know where the high school exists. The population anyways, so I don't know if you went to Old Andrew Ward or...
No, I went to Notre Dame Catholic High
Okay.
School for 2 years, and then I transferred and graduated from Central High School in Bridgeport. Yeah.
I think that's where my mother graduated, last century,
Unless
1930, something like that.
it's a small world, and I've got some Connecticut ties too. I want to go back to the poem, because the other thing I heard in the poem was I heard a script. I mean, I heard the dynamism of a play, because in I'm going back to that Mary Wagner thing about searching for signs of life in the universe, where the one woman showed that who was her partner?
Lily Tomlin.
Lily Tomlin did on
Jane
Broadway.
Wagner.
Jane Wagner. And because there's so much in there, and there's such keen observation, and the fact that it's set around the political capital, and so if the character was the homeless bag lady, watching the goings on and beginning to interpret some of the themes you've got in there, it's a powerful drama, and there's a lot of very strong potential metaphors about the reality of Albany, and even the story of how you found her, because my hunch is that you found her or she found you, right?
I saw her. I ride the bus, and I was working part-time and going to grad school, and I was pretty broke. And so when I talk that last stanza, when I say people carrying bus fare and wish they could share what they don't have, I'm talking about myself. And it's interesting. I think that at different points in life, sometimes we see things more because we're closer to it. And it was just, I just saw her on a regular basis on my way to my little part-time job, and grateful for that, even though I'm still not where I want to be, but still grateful to be there, And so there's a lot of, when you start to open your eyes and make observations and really see people, really see them, then it does something to how you see yourself and what you're feeling. Yeah.
Wow.
The word empathy was what I kept feeling. Here's this woman, you, or the voice of the poet. I see that woman. I see this thing in her of singing, and you brought us back into the singing at the end. And I think that is one of the ways we become that channel of peace, is by noticing, as you say, noticing, witnessing, and opening our hearts. If we can't open our pocketbooks, we can at least open our hearts.
Yes. And witnessing her courage, that's not quite what I mean, but she's down and out, but she's still making that beautiful music that she's offering to anyone who goes by, that she still has that artist in her, and she's still keeping that alive. That it reminds me of, there's a little community in Alabama, Gee's Bend, and it's a black community. Most of the people have the last name of Pettigrew because that was the name of the slave owner back in the Civil War. And I bumped into a display of their quilts the opening day at the Museum of Fine Arts. I just happened to be in Boston, and I wanted to go back to the museum because I used to live in the neighborhood, and there was this exhibit, and I love quilts, and I didn't get the backstory because we were like a subway train full of people moving towards the entrance, and I got shunted off to this room, so I didn't see and I said, look, all their names are Pettigrew. Oh, it's all these families, and then I got I went, oh, that's why they have the same name. And so to me, the Civil War is so far back, it doesn't touch me. but these people are still really connected to it, and they're in that first room. There was these quilts. They look a little like Amish quilts in that they're geometric shapes, large geometric shapes of primary colors put together. But not a pattern, not a, bear paw or split rail or anything like that. More abstract if we're talking in terms of art. But there was one that was made up of blue jeans, pieces of worn out blue jeans, including the blown knees. And once I got the backstory, it was like, this was all this woman had to help keep her family warm. And so she put them together, but she put them together in a pattern because to feed her spirit. She couldn't just, the easiest thing would be just, stripes but no, this was deliberate, and it was
Still singing the blues.
But then another room, and they had them chronologically. Another room, it was all corduroy, because these women had a contract to supply corduroy bolsters for Sears Roebuck for several years, and so the scraps of fabric they had were corduroy. And quilting, there's a top, there's a bottom, there's a squishy middle, and you have to sew those three together. You sew the top and the bottom, you create those layers, but then you have to connect the three. And sewing through corduroy is like, why would you do that? Because that's all you had.
Right.
And you're keeping your family warm. But they, again, not strips, not just, the quickest way to do it. It was
art.
It was art. And the women, the current women of the community who are still making quilts were there, and they were sitting proud, as well they should be, signing the book. It was
quite something.
It was really something, and it was at least over 10 years ago, but I still see those pictures of them in my head. And one of them, we were crushed again in one of the hallways, and there was one of the women, she had a name tag on, so I knew she was one of the quilters. I said, I love your work. And she gave me a hug. And,
back to the, in a way, the script is already there, and the way you do that poem is like the quilt. It's the patterns there, the drama's there, so it really doesn't need to be a play. But it was quite wonderful just the way you do it. I'm effervescent on both sides of me, on all sides of me, because of the talent that's here, and the kids at the well, the children at the well, have you inoculated them with a poetry spirit? Are these kids beginning to generate some poetry, or has that not happened?
I've shared poems with them. That's the space that I'm most comfortable in. So I've shared poems with them, and my poems tell stories. So it works. And then I also feel like there's so many different things that overlap when you're talking about storytelling, or you're writing a novel, or you're writing a poem. There's sensory things that you consider when you're telling a story, when you're writing a poem. There's the images, what's happening, what's around you, what does it look like, what does it taste like, and bringing the audience in, all of those things overlap between poetry, and it's like a genre fluid type of exchange. So they get a lot from that part of it, I think, from me, that I'm able to take all the things that I know from performing poetry or writing poetry and what I want to convey in a poem, and adapt it to how you convey that in a story.
Yeah, I think for me, finding my intention for telling a story is key, because I specialize in stories of real people who made a difference. And true people, actual people made a difference. And so once I figure my intent, then I can prune. I don't need to know they were born in Bridgeport. Sorry, that, or maybe I do.
Maybe it is.
So you phrased it, and why? What did you just say?
About conveying this?
Yeah, conveying. Figure out what you want to convey, and that's true. Even in a folk tale, that you still have an intention of like Nasruddin Hoja, even though it's a playful side of and a different way of looking at things.
What do you love about this story? What is there about this story? Doug Lipman uses the expression MIT. What's the most important thing? And there's lots of ways to say that and to look at that. But yes, that's what we're trying to do with the kids. And so what are you telling this story for? What's the story about for you? And they're very new to storytelling. And we got 2 more rehearsals, so we haven't gone off any tangents of like, okay, let's work on poetry. Let's get this story learned and beautified, and however you're going to tell it.
Polished. Well, shaped at least.
Yes. Yes. Crafted.
And another commercial message, these kids are rehearsing, and they're going to do a program in April, and then they'll be tuned up. If you have an idea where you might want to enthuse a group, inviting these kids to perform and to become part of your group, it's a gimme. It's a gimme, for goodness, I'll tell you.
And the With Our Voice website.
Right.
That would be where to find Paula, who's in charge of directing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. There's a slide that has her email address, her public email address on it. We have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Did this go by that fast?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm going to let the poet have the last word.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know what the last word can be right now.
Make something up, or no pressure. No pressure.
Sure. How about I do the title poem of my book?
Okay.
And it's, I dream in a language that feels like home. The words come to mind when I can't find the right ones in English. This language I learned first, the cadence, the dance that sways with my tongue. Le moi parler Creole. When I speak Creole, I have the voice of Haiti in my throat, thirsting to tell stories that may never be translatable, but will always end with hope. And for that, they will always be worth telling. That worked.
Doesn't get any better than that. Thank you, Danielle.
Oh, they always end with hope, so they'll always be worth telling. Yeah, I think that's my stories, except for one that sort of crashes. But yeah, ending with hope is worth telling.
I would make sure that the Clergy Against Hate had that one on their literature. I know the group, and I mean, it just.
So it's time to say goodbye.
Well, you've listened to rare talents, and we've enjoyed our time together here. We hope you've enjoyed your time together there.
And we'll hope you'll come back again, and or look us up on YouTube, storycircle@proctors.org. Click on YouTube.
Much good cheer.
And may your days be filled with stories and joy.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again,